We are live. I'm Brett Pike, and this is Classical Learner. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Let me just make sure the audio is working. Thanks for being, and I can see that it is. So, thank you for being here tonight. This is a very big day for my young business, and I know for many of you that have followed me on my journey where I started with politics and I wound up starting a business centered around homeschooling. Um, Tonight, I think you're seeing it come full circle because I had a very exciting day for my young business, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to get right into it. As many of you have known, I followed Owen Benjamin for a long time, and I decided to write him a letter, and I made a customized home education plan for his young son, which is what my business does, and I'll get into that. And of course, Owen, as always, he was kind enough to read it on the air. And I'm going to play that for you, and then, well, we'll talk about it and talk about the public education system and what it is that I do. Because there is definitely a better way to educate our children than the school offers.
Wouldn't be here today. I can't believe there's that comedian that the Swiss girl told me about. I have to look him up. Like, there's not a lot of people. Oh, thank you. That's really nice. There's not a lot of people in my position. Dear Owen. Oh, this is great. Wow. This is ridiculously cool. Wow. Dear Owen, Aristotle wrote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it. Over the last 2 years, your journey has demonstrated how few people meet Aristotle's standard of education. As you have ventured into topic after topic, we have seen countless people react in an emotionally conditioned manner. The people that remain, the bears, are the few able to entertain thoughts and draw logical conclusions. Yes. Your journey has assisted me in coming to God. If you would have told me 2 years ago I would participate in weekly Bible studies, I would have said you were crazy. The journey to God helps ground a person and focus on what is most important in life. My wife, son, and I are moving to the country in 18 months. I previously wrote you about FFR News. My YouTube channel focused on homeschooling. What I didn't mention in the previous letter was the evolution of the focus of my work. Oh yeah, I remember, this dude rules. 2 years ago, my channel was about politics. I made documentaries about topics such as Seth Rich murder and the Gulf of Tonkin lie. My journey, in large part impacted by your message, led me to the realization that change happens at the grassroots level. I've since started a business in which I work one-on-one with families to create customized home education plans and coach parents on how to execute the plans. I can be found on Instagram at Classical Learner Today, and my website is www.classicallearner.com. By the way, www is 666 in Hebrew. And isn't it interesting how www is more syllables than
I swear
World
I'm
Wide
not.
Web?
I wasn't
World
coding,
Wide Web. www.
but maybe.
So www isn't an abbreviation. I hope it is not too forward, but I took the liberty of using the information I know about you to create a custom education plan for Walter. It is my understanding you use classical conversations curriculum, which I love. My plan adds to what you are already doing. I would be honored if you and Amy look over my plan. If interested, give me a call so that we can discuss the plan and educational philosophy behind it. We should do a live stream together. My business card with my phone number is attached. You can also email me. God bless, Brett. P.S. Many people do not realize the thousands of dollars you are capable of generating through the reading of advertisements. Every time you do something as you are doing it now, you choose to empower what you believe to be moral and correct and ask nothing in return. Such empowerment has enabled countless members of the Bear businesses to prosper. The integrity you display daily should serve as an example of how to interact with the world. Thank you, Brett. It's very nice of you. Customized. Oh, this is cool. So he sent me just full-blown plans. So, moral, character, logical thinking projects. Walter will host a camping event in which he teaches basic survival skills to family members. Assist Walter in making a list of survival materials needed for camping event. Walter will create a video invitation on the phone to be sent to family members, maybe a comedy. Plan the date and time of outing. Dude, this is so cool. Level up the habit taking on greater challenges. Take Walter's favorite story from the camping event and assist him in turning it into a short book. Walter can draw pictures for book. Make copies of the book. Primary subjects. This is so cool, dude. My wife's gonna love it. Science, yeah. He made this based on the classical conversation curriculum. This guy's great. So again, check out his website. Let him know, or just give him a like. Give him a Rogan. Give him a Rogan's up. Rogan's up. It's www.classicallearner.com, and follow him at Instagram at Classical Learner Today. He's legit. He's been writing me for a while. I can't vouch for internet friends. I've learned that from the past, but I really like this guy.
I do vouch for Owen.
Yeah, he's got whole planners. Yes. So cool. Yeah, like make your own curriculum for your kids.
So that was the letter along with the customized plan I sent to Owen today, and of course he was kind enough to read the letter and speak those kind words. But when I started my journey and I got into politics, Lucy, I'm in the middle of the stream here. I had identified a few pillars that I felt to be wrong with the world, that I felt the pillars of power that are preventing us as Americans from being sovereign, from being free, from living the lives that I think we all know that we should live, that forces prevent us from doing so. And those, of course, were education, Hollywood, the mainstream media, and social media. And I started doing politics and I had success with that, but ultimately it is education that a so-called, I don't like the terminology, but a so-called expert in. I got my bachelor's degree in history education. I got my master's degree in special education, and I've worked in the field of education up until I started Classical Learner for, almost a decade. So when I started to make my pivot, I knew I didn't want to do just politics all the time anymore. It was a natural fit for me to transition to education. So let's get into the plan I made for Walter that I sent to Owen. He read it out loud, but essentially, I believe in feedback-based learning. So that is learning through doing. That's my dog Lucy, by the way. Lucy, you're on camera. So you can sit a child in front of a classroom and have them recite information back to you, but if you want a person to learn, you have to have them do. So within everything that I preach, with the proper way to educate a child, it's have them do. But we're not having them do things that they hate. You can teach a child everything you want them to learn through the act of following their natural interest. I call this motivation stacks. I've made other videos based on it, but I know Walter's interested in the outdoors in this example. So what you do is you have an assignment based on the outdoors. Do you want to go in the other room? She's just a puppy. By the way, let me adjust this screen. Oh, it is pretty, but I have it on pause. So, all right, there you go. So what you want to do is follow a child's natural interest. And the way you do that is the concept of motivation stacks. What you want to do is you want to take their intrinsic interest. So if they're interested in the outdoors, you have them be in the outdoors. And then you want to pair that with external motivation. So that could be, for a 3-year-old, for example, external motivation could be, getting his whole family to come and do something he wants to do, right? They're showing up at his camping event. Um, and then with that, we use the natural motivation, feedback based learning to develop a couple of things, and I'm going to get into them in pretty good detail as we go down the line, and I'll use Owen as the example, to develop talent stacks, which are sets of skills that translate to value in a free market in the real world. Something that I made a video titled Owen Benjamin Talent Stacks a couple of months back, which really goes into the power of having a wide set of skills. Just for example, Owen's been banned off of what? Everything. And you think, okay, well, someone banned off of Twitter, banned, thrown out of Hollywood, demonetized off YouTube, demonetized off PayPal, kicked off of Facebook, kicked off of this, kicked off of that, wouldn't be able to survive. But Owen, and I think we see it all the time, has a rare set of talents. He's a very talented public speaker. He's quick with a joke. He is artistic. He's good on the piano. He has a wide-ranging skill set which allows him to overcome whatever bannings he might face. To the point where if he actually was depersoned off of the internet entirely, well, now he has the skills of building fences and of farming. So he can always make a living because he has a wide-ranging talent stack, and we'll get into that. And then the concept of leveling up. Well, let's talk about the project that that Owen spoke about that I sent for Walter. So basically what he would do is host a camping event, right? And just look at how much better this is in terms of educating a child. Because when you think about what happens in public school, right? A child every day, 181 days a year, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, plus homework, is expected to go and be where they're told to be and memorize what information they're told to memorize. Everything's out of context. After 45 minutes, they might as well wipe their backside with the work because it's meaningless. Well, compare that with this. You have a child. In this case, the example is Walter, and he hosts an outdoor camping event. So what does he have to do? He's 3 years old. He has to plan what's needed for the event. That includes the tent. That includes the location. That includes water. That includes food. Whatever you need for a camping event, and obviously for a 3-year-old, the parents help out. But Walter would have to plan that. Then he's fortunate enough to be on a farm, so he could go out into the garden, pick fruit, pick vegetables that he's going to use for the camping event, anything else that he needs. Maybe they want to make s'mores. They could go to the store, pick up the marshmallows, pick up the sticks, pick up the chocolate, whatever it might be. Then he has to plan the event. When is it going to be? So this is where we incorporate marketing, because in everything we do, especially with early childhood development, the focus should be on the creation of mindset. What mindset do we want to develop? We want, one, an entrepreneurial mindset, and two, we want an abundance mindset. We want children to train their minds to see opportunity. And then, of course, in all of this, when you're taking control of your child's education, you could focus on your morality. I know my son, I'm a Christian, so I'll be raising my child under the morality of what is dictated in the Bible. The biggest travesty of the public education system is that we send our children away and they are indoctrinated with the values of bureaucracies. And I'm gonna get to your questions. I just wanna I really want to drive this home. So you are handing your children over to a bureaucracy, and they're learning about things that you don't want them to learn about, or they're being told if they're a young boy, oh no, that's okay, you can identify as a young girl. Or if your daughter is a young girl, the school is saying, oh no, it's perfectly fine if a boy if a boy goes into the girls' locker room or the girls' bathroom. Now, as a father, me personally, I'm not okay with that, and that's not my value system. Even to things on the more basic level, in which I know when I was in school, the teachers pushed this narrative that anyone who is, for example, if a person is against higher taxation, well, that means they hate poor people. Well, for an adult who has more experience in the world, they might understand the fallacies within that argument, but for a young child who's being told that by their authority figure, well, they're being taught values that are against yours, and they're getting this peer pressure because all of the students are what? They're trained to please authority. The primary lesson taught in school is that truth comes from authority, that we should outsource our thinking to authority, and that we should be obedient to authority. Of course, truth comes from authority because you are tasked with memorizing information. You will repeat back to your teacher what was in the textbook or what your teacher said, and if you don't repeat that back, you are wrong. And of course, the teachers often have worldviews and values that are in complete opposition to your own. Of course, you should be obedient to authority because if you don't, authority's judgment is all that matters. If you don't repeat back what authority said, then you'll get a low letter grade. And usually the parents will then back the authority and say that you need to study what they're saying more. You need to repeat back what they are saying. And outsource your thinking to authority with what I just explained about truth. Children aren't taught critical thinking in school. And here's the example I'll give you. Let's take the Civil War. Generally, in a school setting, children will take 3 weeks to a month learning about the Civil War. They will be given textbook information, which they will be tasked with memorizing over a short period of time. Let's say they memorize that information, take the test, they get 100, they get an A+, good job. Well, all they really learned was what authority told them. They didn't think critically and determine. They didn't have any original thoughts about the Civil War. They're just repeating what they're told. So they probably believe that the Civil War was started over slavery. Now, for people like me that are historians, many of you know that slavery was way down the list in terms of causes of the Civil War. In fact, it had nothing to do with the cause of the Civil War. The most relevant part of slavery to the Civil War is that Abraham Lincoln used the Emancipation Proclamation to increase Union, that's Northern enrollment into the Union Army, the Northern Army. So he played on the sympathy of some white people that were against slavery, white Christians, and those people fought and died to stop slavery. Pretty different than the narrative we're taught in school, but that's the truth. Now, take that same concept and have your child learn about the Civil War. But instead of memorizing, outsourcing their thinking to authority and repeating back what was in a textbook, we're going to have them do something different. Have them read a historical book about the Civil War. They could pick the book out. They could pick it out by whatever they want. They could pick it out by the cover of the book, by the book title. And maybe when they're reading that book, they come across a historical figure like Ulysses S. Grant, maybe Stonewall Jackson. My voice cracking. Maybe Stonewall Jackson, right? You wouldn't like that voice cracking. I sound like Steven Crowder. But so what you do is then you say, okay, well, you like Stonewall Jackson in this book? Well, why don't you read his autobiography? I don't know if Stonewall wrote an autobiography, but if he didn't, then they put books together, historians. You could read the correspondence, the primary documents, the original letters from Stonewall Jackson. And then after your child reads about Stonewall Jackson, maybe they're interested in another figure in the Civil War, and you say, you know what? You can read about the next historical figure. You can read their primary writings. And instead of taking 3 weeks, take 5 months reading primary document, book after book about the Civil War. How many 18 and 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds know anything about the Civil War with the memorization method? Do you think that child, when they're a grown up, will remember what they learned studying the Civil War, just following their interests and allowing them to read the primary documents? Of course they will, because they're thinking critically. And then after each reading, so after they read Stonewall Jackson's book, for example, what you do is you can have them, it doesn't have to be too rigid, because you got to keep in mind, if you're educating a child right, they are writing every day. They're writing because they love to write. They're reading because they love to read. I can teach this, how you get your child to love writing and reading. Because especially early childhood education, the primary objective should be, well, among a few things that we'll get into, developing a love for reading and writing, rather than most children by 5th grade hate school. Children don't hate to learn. The compulsion of school makes them hate learning. So it could be a paper, it could be an art project, it could be a play they put on. But then after they do this primary reading of Stonewall Jackson, you have them put together a presentation in which they present an original theory. I mean, it doesn't have to be original, like maybe someone else thought of it, but a theory that they came up with on their own based on the readings of Stonewall Jackson about his role in the Civil War, about whatever you want, but based on those readings. And then as a unit study, after all of the Civil War reading has been done, you can have your child formulate an original theory based on their critical thinking, very different than the memorization method, in which they, basically their original theory on the Civil War. And then we always promote leveling up. So depending on their age and what you're comfortable with, you can have them post this original theory on the internet. You can have them post a little book about it, publish a little book about it, write a letter to a newspaper. There's so many different things you can do to develop real-world tangible skills, critical thinking skills that are completely outside of what is taught in public education. So getting back to the lesson that I gave to Walter. So basically what Walter would be doing is he's setting up this camping party and he's figuring out what he needs. He's going to the grocery store. He's doing the math, figuring out how much the ingredients cost. He's starting to understand what money is, which, by the way, you want to talk about the failures of the education system? Why is there nothing taught about financial literacy? But we'll get into that. But he's dealing with money. He's doing math. He is putting together and organizing a pretty complex party for a young child. Then we have to, because we always want to teach a business mindset, he's going to engage in marketing. So there's a number of ways he could do marketing. One of the suggestion I made to Owen and Amy in this scenario would be to have Walter create a video. It could be a comedic video, which I think would be appropriate. And that's his marketing. So he'll send a video invitation to his family or whatever friends, that Owen and Amy are close with, that, they think would be appropriate to invite to this camping event. So now he's doing marketing. He's inviting people to the event. Of course, his family members are going to show up because that's what family does. And family is great for teaching these type of skills. By the way, in the spirit of Big Bear, if you could hit the Rogan's Up button and share this link, especially with people interested in this type of topic, I would greatly appreciate that. So you send the invitation out to family and they show up. And then at the camping event, we always encourage public speaking because this is one of the skills we want to teach. So we would have, there's a prelude to the event where Owen would teach Walter a few skills like first aid stuff. It could be as simple as if you get a cut, you go into your first aid kit, you get a Band-Aid, you clean out the cut with water, and you put the Band-Aid on, right? That's appropriate for a 3-year-old. So you would have Walter present at the camping event to his family and friends the proper first aid procedure of how to deal with a cut. And what you're doing is you're getting him comfortable in a very natural way with people he's comfortable with And we, in all assignments, always public speaking, public speaking, public speaking, being comfortable in that setting, communication. So Walter would be presenting publicly how to properly clean a cut and make sure there's going to be no infection. Clean it out, put on a Band-Aid. And while he's doing that, one, he's learning the skills for himself, because if you can teach it, you can do it. And two, he's gaining comfort and experience with more important big picture life skills. Because education should be focused on that big picture. Now, what I suggested is, after that, you start a fire. And of course, with that, you could have Owen teaching Walter. Everything's teaching. We don't do for our children. Don't do for your children. You do the bare minimum, which is a lot. You make sure they're safe, you teach, and you let them figure things out. So, Owen, obviously you want to do fire safety, but could work very closely with Walter to, get the fire set up. You can get the sticks, get the leaves, whatever it's going to be, put everything together, build a little teepee, and then light the fire. These are all real world skills. You light the fire, you have everyone sit around the fire with their s'mores. You could even have Walter pass it out, because you say, you understand, you're hosting this party. This is your event, right? A lot of organizational skills, a lot of planning, a lot of thinking, a lot of critical thinking. You're hosting this party, and he passes out all the s'more materials, and then you have everyone sit around the fire, make s'mores, and tell stories. Thank you, Drop Bear. Smash the Romans up. And tell stories. So what you would have them do is, I'm sure, like in this example, because we're using Owen as the example, he would be great for this, because I'm sure he could think of off the top of his head something hilarious that would make everyone laugh. And then Walter would see his dad tell this story, and everyone laughs, and then the person to the right of Owen, maybe it's Amy, maybe it's Grandpa, maybe it's a friend, whoever it is, they tell their story. And you just go around the campfire making s'mores, and everyone tells their story, and of course, when you get to Walter, he could tell his own original story. End of camping event. We always encourage leveling up and entrepreneurial mindset. So when Walter gets home the next day, you talk to him about the stories told at the campfire. You say, Walter, which story did you like the most? So he would say, I think this is a great idea. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate that. So, Walter, which story do you like the most? Well, I like the story that Dad told. Whatever. Or I like my story, even better. Okay, well, why don't we do something fun? Why don't we make it into a book? And you sit down with him and you write down the story, whatever his level of reading and writing is. But you write down the story and you go over the letters. And with all writing assignments, right, like children are 18 years old and they're illiterate. If you sit down with a child, have them write every day about whatever they're interested in, doesn't matter. I don't care if they want to write about the leaves outside. Doesn't matter. Just make them love writing. And then you sit down with them once a day at the end of the day and you read over the writing and you tell them how great it is. And you talk about proper grammar and spelling, and you talk about the different ways in which you could structure writing. Well, you do that with a child every day, and by the time they're in 6th grade, they will write better than most 18-year-olds. God's sake, I didn't learn to write until I was in a master's program. That was the only thing I learned from my master's program. It's the only thing of value I learned. And they didn't teach that to me. I just, by chance, they forced me to write a lot. And what a shocker. You keep writing, you get good at writing. By the way, that's like a claim. That's right. I was like, prove your claim. Are you good at writing? Go to www.classicallearner.com. That is my website. Hit up my blog. I write a lot about my educational philosophy. You could tell me if I'm good at writing. Shameless plug. So, you have Walter work on this plan, and not work on this plan. Write the story that he heard at the campfire, and he writes the story, and you have him do the artwork. Right? You could even, if you want to take it to a fun level, you could have him put on some type of play or make some type of video depicting the story, so you can do a video story with it. And then what we want to do is the next time his family members are around, or let me wind that back, I want to promote Tumble Bear. You're 17 and you hate writing? Start writing about things you want to write about instead of things that you're forced to write about. And trust me, over time you'll start to love it because you'll start to feel like you're doing the work that you're meant to do. You know, when I write about education, it's not hard for me because I love education. I hated writing growing up. But I don't love public education. I love the ideas that I have in which I'm attempting to revolutionize education. So we always promote leveling up. So after you have Walter write this story, you say, Walter, this story is great. I love what you did with this. I love the artwork. I think other people would like this story. Why don't we make copies of this story? And you could use the computer, whatever it is, make photocopies, whatever it is, and you could put this book together. You put together his little story, his little book. In his mind, it's a book, right? Eric, never worry. I'm level 1. Never worry about what level you are. Here's a problem that people have, right? People spend their lives, and this is cultural conditioning, right? People spend their lives comparing themselves to everyone else, right? It's part of the reason why no one starts a business because, for instance, if Classical Learner fails, if my business fails, then all of the smug people who I went to college with and go the traditional route will say, oh, haha, look at Brett. He thought he could do something, and what an idiot. No one wanted his Classical Learner. No one believed in his educational philosophy. People spend their lives worrying about what other people think. If you're level 1, that doesn't matter. It's like you see the people, it's like the new age keeping up with the Joneses, right? So you see the people who are always posting their glorious lives on Facebook, on social media, and everything is roses. And for me, I'm a glass half full person. I really hope their life is roses. In fact, not only do I hope their life is roses, I congratulate them, and I'll tell them these new things I'm getting into that really help me and they should get into. But what people do is they see other people's lives and they go, oh, man, this guy really has it together. This guy, he has the beautiful wife and the children. Or if you're into shallow things, which you shouldn't be, this guy has the car. This guy's always traveling. And I'm not doing any of that. Never compare yourself to another person. Ever. You compare yourself to you. So when I wake up in the morning, I only want to be better than myself. So if I wake up today and I'm a better person by tomorrow morning, then I had a great day. And I don't care about anyone else. And that's why early childhood education especially is, and this is what I focus on with what I teach with my plans, early childhood education is all about mindset. Everything else doesn't matter. All right? So don't ever say you're level 1, bro. You're not level 1. You're the level of Eric. That's your level. And tomorrow you'll be Eric plus 1, and the next day you'll be Eric plus 2. And that's how you grow in life, and that should be your approach to life. Because, Owen's a perfect example, right? You heard Owen. Oh, I'm not handy. Oh, I can't build anything. I don't know why that's my big bear voice. I hope he doesn't give me one because it would be hilarious and destroy me rhetorically. But he's like, oh, I can't build this. I can't do that, right? Well, look at him now, right? He wasn't a handyman. He couldn't build a ramp for his son. Now he's putting up fences, right? Now he has this immaculate farm that he posts pictures of every day. You don't get that overnight. You get that through getting better every day. And it's the same thing we do with early childhood education up into how we educate our children. It's a different way of looking at the world. Mindset is everything in life. Everything. You got to have a good mindset. It's to the point where like people like me and the people watching this, you're capable of thinking differently than the majority of the population, right? They'll say, oh my God, you can't say things like that. Why? Because they're worried about what everyone else thinks, right? Or they're worried about social shame. If you don't like the table, flip it over and start a new game. Or if you don't like the game, flip the table over and start a new game. But you can't worry about social shame. You can't compare yourself to everyone else. And this is all relevant to early childhood and middle school and high school education, because we need to develop the proper mindset in our children. And that is an entrepreneurial mindset, a mindset of an abundance, affirmations, making sure your child is confident in who they are, knowing that they have unconditional love, and with that love, the confidence to be who they are. That's how we change the world. So where was I? So you say, Walter, you just made this book. Let's make photocopies of it. I'm sure people will love it. And then we want to teach an entrepreneurial mindset from a young age. So say, Walter, I bet people would want to buy your book. And the next time you're at a family outing, whatever it is, you have the grandparents around, you have the friends around, let him set the price because he's a 3-year-old and they'll set it at like 25 cents. And it's no harm, no foul, but it's about teaching the mindset. And what you do is grandpa comes, I'll buy that book. And grandpa buys the book for 25 cents. And what you're doing is you're creating the right business mindset in the world so that when that child's 14 years old and all of his friends are looking for summer jobs and crying to their parents that they don't want to work, that child is, no, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a lawnmower and I'm going to make flyers and I'm going to start a little lawn mowing business. I'm just going to say, get your lawn mown by an American, and he's going to start a little business, right? And he's going to play to that market. But you have to create the proper mindset in your children, and we do that from a young age. So within everything we do, we want to create the proper mindset. Now, it's not just about mindset. It's just not about business. It's about more than that. So I'm going to take... This is at www.classicallearner.com. And this is essentially what my plans look like. So, I gotta do it over here. That's annoying, but alright, whatever. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. So, we always want to do projects. Now, what I do is I make the initial plan for parents, and then I have 3 one-on-one sessions with them, or 6 one-on-one sessions, monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the plan the parents want to buy. But we start with projects like the one I just described with Walter. And yeah, you want to do the English, history, stuff like that. Like for English, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, it's called the Classical Trivium of Education. It's why I like the Classical Conversations curriculum that Owen uses for Walter. And basically the Classical Trivium of Education goes like this. Throughout most of history, only the elites could afford an education, and the education they received was grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So, grammar, for example, if you were to join the debate team at Princeton, the first thing they would teach you is that you have to force your opponent to define his term. And a great example of this is liberal, right? Historically, liberal meant equal rights for everyone. Like if you're getting back to like 1776 times, liberal meant equality under the law for everyone and limited government. Well, today, liberal the definition has been bent to the point where it means the exact opposite. Today, liberal means different rules depending on your skin color, different laws depending on your skin color, depending on your sexual orientation, and maximum government intrusion into our lives. The exact opposite of what it used to be. So, if you join the Princeton debate team, what they would teach you is you have to force your opponent to define their term, because by forcing them to define their term, you can't let them bend the words, so to speak, so that words have different meanings in different contexts. And then with that, obviously, you want to teach, where to use commas, where to use colons, semicolons, that type of thing, different ways to structure sentences. Then there's rhetoric, so it's grammar, it's rhetoric. I'm sorry, it's grammar, it's logic, which is simple enough, is the process of removing contradictions from the way you think. So if you identify a contradiction within your worldview, you could either ignore that contradiction, in which you would be displaying cognitive dissonance, or you could say, wait a second, these are two conflicting ideas. How do I correct them? So, I mean, the way you teach this is very simple. I mean, you go over your child's writing every day, and anytime they have contradictions, you use questioning to get them to identify their own contradictions. And you talk about how great it is that they identified the contradiction and what they have to do to alter their arguments or to change their view to make sure there is no contradiction. So grammar, logic, and this is what's taught historically. You could read a book by Dorothy Sayers. It's called The Lost Tools of Learning. 35 pages, very easy read, which teaches this, discusses this on how an application level and a historical level. What ages are my plans created for? All ages, up until 18. So grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which a lot of you follow. Oh, and obviously, right, John Taylor Gatto, right? I derive a lot of my educational theory and philosophy. It's not exact, but from the teachings of Gatto, who, if you haven't read him as a parent, it's criminal that every university in the country doesn't teach the philosophy of Gatto. But of course, then you wouldn't be in this predicament. And the whole point is that the public education system is broken, and it's broken on purpose. But I'll get into that another day. Let's focus on one thing for now. I mean, why would an education system focus on memorization over critical thinking? Why would you focus on what to think rather than, if you're an educator, why would you focus on the what to think over the how to think? The education system is as broken as it can be. I mean, you want to talk about the focus on public education. Like, oh, the problem is math and science. The problem is not math and science scores. The problem is you're teaching memorization, not critical thinking. The problem is moral depravity. The problem is 18-year-olds in this system are graduating with nothing in terms of real-world skills. Zilch, nothing. 18-year-olds can't balance a checkbook. They know nothing about the stock market. Not that I'm some guru on the stock market, but you would think, like, I don't know, we're mandated by law, essentially, because the way the tax system works, to put part of our money into a 401k, because if you don't put it in the 401k, they take it via taxation. That's by the way, it's a robbery, it's theft, and people are like, oh, I don't see a problem with that. You're saving for the 401k. No, what they're saying is you have to give Goldman Sachs your money, because if you don't, the government's going to take it anyway and give it to Goldman Sachs. So, but the school system doesn't teach anything about this. It doesn't teach anything about entrepreneurial. It doesn't teach an entrepreneurial mindset. It doesn't give children entrepreneurial experience. And the system is completely broken. It's completely broken. And it's designed to be broken. The public education system teaches what it is designed to do. You are to be obedient to authority. You will do what your teacher says. You are to outsource your thinking to authority. Your teacher is right. The textbooks are right. You are going to go through the information quickly. Memorize the information to make sure that you never think critically about the information and you don't learn the how of thinking over the what of thinking. The public education system, the problem is not math and science. The public education system is broken from the base level, from the fundamental level. And no changes in curriculum, no changes in teacher salary, no changes in public funding or the way they educate teachers to be educators is going to change the fundamental problems with the public education system. But I could give you a history lesson. I could get into the Reese Committee. I could get into big tax-exempt foundations hijacking the public education system, but that's a talk for another day. Where I was. Where would I recommend starting with Gatto? Summerlin gives you a good read. Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. That will get into the how to teach, and then afterward you want to read Weapons of Mass Instruction. And anyone who might not be a reader, although with Audible, there's no reason you shouldn't be reading books. But anyone who is maybe not a reader, there's also a 5-hour interview. If you type in Tragedy and Hope, the ultimate history lesson, it's done by this guy, Richard Grove. He is phenomenal. And he had a 5-hour talk with John Taylor Gatto, in which Gatto outlines his philosophy and the history of education. And luckily, Richard was able to get that out to the world before Gatto passed away a few years ago. By the way, Gatto's wife, I believe she is sick. I'm not sure if it's still the case. I have donated to her, but after you go through Gatto's work and realize what a phenomenal human being he is, check out, see if his wife still needs help and help her. Because Gatto, he was a world changer. So, all right, so grammar, logic, and rhetoric. History, I discussed a little bit, should be all about getting back to primary documents and critical thinking. History is the best way to teach critical thinking, and I majored in history, which I think was very instrumental in me going through my own political cultural awakening, because a few years ago I did not sound anything like how I sound now. So, but the thing is, if you know how to get back to primary documents, if you know critical thinking, once you realize something's amiss, once one of the veils is taken out from under your eyes. I mean, my awakening started because my sister started telling me how all of our food was poison. And, I did what everyone else did. Oh, okay, crazy. Okay. And anyway, I respected my sister, so I looked into it one day, and I started getting back to, court cases and primary documents, and I was like, wait a second. A court of law found that Roundup, and its primary ingredient, glyphosate, causes cancer, and it's just sprayed on all of our food. I was like, wait a second, this is amiss. For sure a school would have told me this, and certainly the government, right? I mean, certainly the FDA would have said, the Food and Drug Administration would have said, the primary ingredient being sprayed in all of our food causes cancer. And then I said, wait a second, how are they not telling me this? So I just used logic. I said, okay, well, let me do some Googling. And I said, who's talking about this? And I found people that were talking about that. And I said, okay, well, what else are they talking about? And they started talking about all type of crazy things like the Federal Reserve, fiat currency, fractional reserve banking. And I said, oh, shit. Everything's a lie. And then I said, wait a second. I'm a historian. What about the history I was taught? And I realized most of history was a lie. I said, oh, I got to get back to square one. And by the time I finished going through my awakening, I said, hell no, my child's not going to school. And then I started Classical Learner, and, well, here I am with you fine folks. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I do hope Owen does the live stream with me. I've been following the guy for 2 years, so that would be just an awesome experience for me. And 2, I think it goes without saying what just him reading that has already done for my business here. Thank you, Owen, if you're out there watching. Thank you. You put yourself out there in the world, you take a lot of risks. It's a scary world, man. It's a scary world. You say things that go against the mainstream, and people target you. People want to come for you. If this goes belly up and I have to apply for a job, you would think a public school would see this and be like, wow, we really need to bring this guy in, but something tells me I'll get the opposite response. Man, you know how that works. Math. So math, I mean, I always sucked at math. What I say, I mean, there are things you can learn like elephant learning and stuff like that you can use for math. What I try to do, especially in early childhood, is suggest I just suggest you use games as much as possible. Make math fun. Children go to school that hate math. Math's not fun. Use games and use real world experience. Going to the grocery store. You could have your children help you build cool things like you got firewood, have them help you build a wood rack and do the measurements and start to learn math that way. Foreign language, I am vehemently opposed to television. In fact, Truth Stream Media posted a video today explaining that when people watch television, right, people are, if you just put someone out in nature, right, they're just walking around in nature, they're generally in a beta mindset. So what that means is they're observing the world, they're vigilant. This probably gets back to fight or flight stuff, right? You're in a beta mindset, so you're like, all right, I better be alert because if I'm not, a lion might come out from the trees and eat me, right? Well, when people watch television, they've done brain studies on this. They change to an alpha mindset. You would think that's good. It's not. What that means is they no longer observe what's going on around them, and they kind of become mindless drones watching the television. We all have seen this, and the average person watches television for 30, 40 hours a week, which is sick. I never turn on the television for my child. He's almost 18 months old. I never turn the TV on for him. The only thing he's watched is every now and then, if he's giving us a really hard time, I'll put on like an animal show where he watches where he learns a little bit about the animals in the world because it's a good way of exposing to him to, hey, look, sharks are a thing, seals are a thing. And then yesterday I took him to the aquarium and we saw real sharks and we saw penguins and all those cool things. Oh, there's no place like home is in the house. I've been wanting to do a stream with you for some time now, so I do plan. I know we talked about it a while back and things get in the way, but I plan on holding you to that. I really want to have you on. If you don't follow There's No Place Like Home on Instagram, you need to follow her because if you want to talk about ways to educate a child, she has something crazy. I don't know, like she's living the dream. She has like 10 children and she's been homeschooling them for years. She's a Christian. Coolest woman, one of the cooler people I follow on the internet. And, if you want to learn homeschooling strategies, she's the person. So yeah, let's, if you want to inbox me on Instagram, let's set up a stream sometime because I love that. Foreign language. So, I don't speak a foreign language. So, what I plan on doing with my son is as he starts to get around the next 2 or 3 months, I'm going to only Liberty Snake Bear in the house, my man. I'm going to allow him to watch some cartoons in a foreign language just for the purpose of exposure. And then what I plan to do is when he gets a little older, I'm going to set up video pen pals with people in Spain, wherever it might be. Exposure, because their minds are sponges, and you should teach your child a second language at a young age. I also want to teach him Latin, which I still have to figure out how to do. Around the time when he was born, I was teaching myself Latin. I had gotten Latin on Rosetta Stone. I started to learn it because that's the root language, and I wanted to teach it to him. But unfortunately, I was spending time doing that, and my wife basically told me she was going to kill me if she heard me say one more word in Latin, so I told her I'd put that off. But, give and take. That's marriage, people. But yeah, Latin's the root language. You got to learn Latin. That's why it's spelling, right? When you spell, words are used to cast spells on people, right? That's why there's certain words within our language that if you say them, people won't even listen to you speak anymore. They'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that word, because spells have been cast upon them in which they give up their ability to think critically. Anyway, where were we? Um, philosophy is very important. So when I talked about logic, I want you to develop what I call intellectual self-defense in your child. This is a concept I actually learned. The guy Richard Grove I talked about, who did the interview with Gatto. If you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, he has a podcast called The Peace Revolution. I strongly recommend it. Type in The Peace Revolution. Don't start at episode 95. Go back to episode 1. They're like Owen streams, and this guy, I thought I was a historian, and then, man, this guy he's next level with his history. But he also teaches concepts like intellectual self-defense, which is recognizing contradictions within your own thought process, logic, understanding the reason as to why you do things, and using that to better your life. So philosophy is a very important part of what we do, and in my opinion, what I preach is that philosophy should be done every day in your home from the time your child's a young age. So this can be done very simple. A lot of what I do is custom, but a lot of what I do, even if you don't get a plan with me, you can do this with your children. So like, create a philosophy bowl. Spend a little bit of time, print out some philosophy questions, whatever it might be, and put them in a fishbowl or create a board. And every day, maybe at dinner, your children don't even have to know you're doing it. Introduce them to a new philosophy question. And then discuss philosophy and use the Socratic method. All you're doing, you're not telling them right or wrong. You're just introducing question after question. And with the questions, you're leading them to think about the roots of their own views on the world. And that is how you start to create the mindset of how to think, of logical thinking. I call this intellectual self-defense. And over time, they'll start to recognize fallacies within their own thought process. They'll start to recognize contradictions within their own thought process. And this is how we raise our children to be strong thinkers. And there's a lot more that goes into it, but you get the idea. You get it. You get it? You get it. So this is the most exciting thing about what I teach or preach or whatever it is that I do. Creative excellence. I'm just going to read it. A person capable in the following subjects can bring any thought or idea in their mind into physical reality. A person capable of taking any of their thoughts and bringing those thoughts into physical reality is very unlikely to have to rely on anyone else in life, especially when we pair creative excellence with the concept I introduced earlier, talent stacks, right? If they have experience with business, with marketing, with sales, with incorporating, with that type of thing, and then they have creative excellence where any thought they have, they can bring it into physical reality, they're very unlikely to ever need a job, in my opinion. Why is that? Well, take someone that is proficient in art. They are proficient in painting, drawing, sculpting, graphic design on the computer. That's important. So they can draw, essentially, any thought they have, they can put it on paper. They can draw it. Music. A person capable of writing their own music, playing their own music, can make original songs. They can use that. You want to talk about, all right, so like you want to look at Owen Benjamin. He might be sour with the guy now, but look at what he did with his Tommy Robinson song. This is how they rule ya. I'm not going to sing because I don't want everyone to leave the stream, but you get the idea. A person capable of creating music, they can use that in a variety of ways, including very creative ways of marketing and combining music to make effective rhetoric. I mean, think about the rhetoric of that song. They said there was a secret court, journalist not allowed to report, but you don't really care for freedom, do ya? Yeah, I'm trying to think how the song goes. Maybe I'll play it for you. Maybe I'll play it for you. So, you know what? I'm just gonna. So listen to if your child's able to do something like this, the power of it. How they rule you. Think about this rhetorically speaking. Like, if you're trying to make something go viral and a country's emotional, or if you want your business to go viral or your idea to go viral. I mean, man, if I see, I'm not new. I didn't learn these skills as a child, and I recognize them now. It's by the way, we're gonna get into spirituality, and I've grown profoundly religious over the last year, which is shocking to me, and we have to seek self-knowledge within ourselves and self. You have to think self within self, right? Learn better ways of talking. We have to pursue self-knowledge, understanding of who we are, and that can be done through the concept of religion. So just real quick, so like Christianity is about truth. Like, all right, I'm very philosophical, right? So people are like, oh, you need to repent. I talk to God. I take the literal word of the Bible. So I don't like that the mainstream doesn't know God's name. So I talk to Jehovah because that's what his name is in the Bible. So I talk to Jehovah every night, and I repent, and I say, this is. You want to talk about wizardry, by the way? I looked into because I was reading the Bible, and I was like, why don't people use God's name if it's in the Bible? And the answer for that is, well, God's name was translated from another text, and that the Jewish people stopped using God's name because they thought it was respectful to stop using his name. And I said, wait a second. Well, if God used these prophets and he said, this is what I want you to put into the Bible, and this is what I want you to spread, and in that, within the Bible, he used his name Jehovah, how would it be respectful to dishonor his wishes and use his name? People not using Jehovah's name seems like wizardry that could only be thought of by the devil, in my opinion. But I digress. Anyway, so think about the rhetoric, the rhetorical power of this. Hold on, let me run that back.
I heard there was a secret court where journalists weren't allowed to report, but you don't really care for freedom, do you? It goes like this: without the fifth, the gavel falls and they cuff your wrists. It's not okay that this is how they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule.
By the way, that picture is rhetorically brilliant.
Tommy has been here before. He's seen this room and he's walked this floor. Last time they tried to kill him, but he endured you. They need the votes for the growing state and won't stop who their voters rape. It's not okay that this is how they rule you.
Tree trimmer, I'll address that.
How they rule you. How they rule you.
Can't be binary thinkers.
How they rule you. There was a time the press let you know who's really coming to your shores, but now they never tell the story. True, yeah. Press says it's all about racial hate, but really it's a fear of a caliphate. State don't care, they say this is how we rule you. Hallelujah. Pedophiles are liberated. Well, Tommy Robinson's incarcerated. But you never really cared for children, do you? The grooming gangs moved in on you, and the kids look up to you for truth. Please don't say, baby, this is now how they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule you. How they rule you.
Okay. So it's very rhetorically powerful, and that's just one of the things that, a person that could play music. So a person could do art, they could do music. Just to address Tree Trimmer Bear, yeah, I'm not a Jehovah Witness. I'm not a binary thinker, so I do things a lot differently than most people, as you can see by the education that I promote. So when I see something that I find to be abnormal, I just go against the grain because I feel it right in my heart to do so. So like when I think about Christianity, like I'm not capable of reciting every Bible verse to you or anything like that, but I think Christianity is the path to truth, the path to enlightenment. It's the spirituality that I embrace, and to me, Christianity is the Bible is a guide onto a Bible is a guide as to how to avoid being blackmailed in life, right? Like, for instance, take the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Most of the people that went to Epstein's Island probably went there because they were told, hey, I'm a billionaire, we're going to go to my private island, it'll be great, there's all these girls there, they're there, you don't say they're there voluntarily, it's assumed, right? There's all these girls there, and you're going to go, and so the people go there, and they hook up with the girls, right? And then they find out that, oh, wait a second, the girls are underage. And then they get blackmailed, right? And now that politician, that person, they're owned. Well, so to me, the Bible is, it's an explanation of how evil works in the world, and it's saying, no, if you follow this path, you won't get blackmailed, and you'll be able to walk a better path in life and live a good life. So I just encourage all people to, if they have any roots in Christianity, to embrace those roots and think about these things a little bit more. And I think I don't like when people are like, oh, well, I'm a Catholic. Oh, well, I'm Jehovah Witness. Oh, well, I'm evangelical. Well, I'm whatever they might be, right? Like, I'm this branch and my branch is right and everyone else is an idiot. Like, I don't think that's, in my opinion, the message from Jesus. I think the message is you should be attempting to walk the path of Jesus and live a moral and better life from his example. So anyway, if that gives some clarification, but yeah, listen, that's the beautiful thing about homeschooling. If you aren't religious in that way, don't raise your children with my values, just raise them with yours. Anyway, so you have art, you have music, you have computer coding, right? If you are good enough at computer coding, you could essentially, you could create The Sims, right? You could create entire universes. And many of the people that are billionaires, corruption aside, but like people like Mark Zuckerberg and, Mark Cuban made his money from computer coding. They were able to make that money because they were able to take their ideas and put them onto a computer and give application to that so that people can use it. So you have art, you have music, you have computer coding. Then we want construction. I need someone to be able to build with their hands, right? Earlier, I gave the example that you should build wood racks with your young children, right? Stack the wood on the wood racks that you built. You can, if you're going to build a shed, build it with your young child, right? Hold on, I got to jump back into this Christian talk. I can't help myself. What are you guys saying? Owen Benjamin is brilliant. The Path to Logos, I agree. I love E. Michael Jones, right? He's a Catholic. I always criticize Catholicism, not Catholicism itself, but the Pope, who's clearly a pedophile. To me, if you go to a church and your priest isn't talking about the problems within the church, the problems of pedophilia, then you owe it to, if you're going to be a part of that church, like me, I'll call my priest out. I'll say, no, we need to talk about this as a community. I think stuff like that is important, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean the average Catholic is bad. I think most Catholics that I know are phenomenal people. I mean, the ones that take it seriously. The problem with Jehovah's Witness, yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I'm not that. I respect people of all different beliefs. All right, anyway, back to my plan. So all right, so you want them to do art, you want them to do music, computer coding, construction, engineering, right? And there's a lot you can do with engineering, all of the STEM stuff. I mean, you could go on Pinterest and you could find endless suggestions for things you can do in terms of engineering. So you take a child and they now have the ability to do art, do music, do coding, do construction, do engineering, they have familiarity with architecture. This person can take any idea in their mind and bring it into physical reality. Think about how powerful that is. Now you take that person and they also have the ability to do business, and you're going to be dealing with a person who is very capable of being sovereign, being an individual, and being successful in life. My daughter is doing Minecraft STEM. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could do, right? Minecraft is great for STEM. I was working with a family the other day. They had their children building all types of things. They had their children building full-out slides, like incredible slides out of piping, and they were pouring water down the slides and then having their little action figures go down the slides. There's so much you can do to teach engineering from a young age. With all of that, we want to promote public speaking. I gave the example earlier that when Walter hosts his camping party, right, he's going to have all of his family, family, friends at this camping outing, and Walter's going to give them a lesson, public speaking, about the proper procedure on how to use a Band-Aid and how to clean out a cut so that it doesn't get infected. Everything we do should be experienced in public speaking. Lifestyle. It's so funny, right? We hear all the time, oh my God, there is this problem. There is a problem in our society. Everyone has cancer. Everyone's obese. Everyone is having heart attacks. All of these different things, right? Well, families send their children to school and they give up the ancient wisdom that was passed down from mother to mother to mother to mother, father to father to father to father. Children should have nutritional intelligence, and you can teach this from a young age. So, very simple stuff. Once a month, maybe. You don't have to do it every week. You can do it every week, whatever your preference. You have your child help out with the grocery list, and you have them go to the grocery store with you, and you have them do the budgeting and talk about how much money they'll need, and put the money together and go to the grocery store and buy the food. And then as they start to get experience with that, then you have them do research, right? You have them do research on the products on the back of the box. So they might do research on aspartame. And when they do the research, they'll find out that aspartame does what? they'll find out that it causes cancer. So now your child's growing up and they have experience buying food. Um, they have experience buying food. They have experience. They are familiar with the ingredients in food, and they know what to avoid. And they know that what they're being told by the public is a lie, so that they have to take responsibility for their child's own nutrition. And this is how you prevent your child from growing up and having a heart attack and growing up and getting cancer or diabetes, right? Because they do research on sugar and they realize that, wait a second, by the time they're 12 years old, they might realize that sugar is really bad for them, and maybe they'll take some self-responsibility and eat less sugar. And then, of course, with that, from a very young age, children should be involved in gardening. If you don't have a farm, if you have an apartment even, what you do is you get a couple of indoor plants that your child can take care of, and from a very young age, you have them tend to the plants. And then, of course, with that, they could learn science, they could learn about photosynthesis, and you could have them do little cute projects and so many things you can do. But you're teaching nutrition, healthy lifestyle, and you're making it a lifestyle. And who wants their child to die of a heart attack when they're 50? Right. How did your ancestors eat? We want to get back to that. I mean, I'm not perfect. I had ice cream the other day, but I try to be as good an eater as possible. I try to be vegetarian as much as possible because my wife's an acupuncturist, and what she says is I have heat in my system, which means when I have meat specifically, it doesn't affect my system the way I would want it to. So for me, I need cold foods for my system to operate optimally. So I eat fruits and vegetables, but I'm not perfect. But the point is, my child will grow up in the lifestyle in which we value healthy eating, and that is something that should be focused on in your child's life from a very, very young age. Physical fitness. Your children should see you working out from a young age. You should have them, all children should be involved in at least one team sport because it teaches leadership, which every month, I try to break the plans into monthly philosophical ideas. You should do something focused on leadership, and there's very little I could think of better for the development of leadership than team sports. But we don't just want team sports, we also want to develop physical confidence in our children, especially, no, I don't even want to say especially for young men and young girls. My child, for example, and I do recommend this to all children, will be starting MMA fighting. I have a friend that's a semi-pro MMA fighter. I went to college with Aljamain Sterling, who I think he might be getting a title fight in the UFC. So, Aljo, if you're out there, my guy, congratulations. I'm happy for you, brother. So yeah, I went to college with Aljamain Sterling. He was on my flag football team. Good athlete. His brother's probably a better athlete. I had no idea at the time how good my flag football team was at fighting, by the way. They're like all-American wrestlers and stuff. I thought we were a flag team. We should have been a pro fighting team. But all children should be enrolled in MMA fighting, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, karate, because it helps them develop the self-confidence so that they never have to use it, and the self-confidence to speak their mind. It's something that's very important, especially in the age of bullying. Business. I already spoke about that a little bit, but marketing, sales, financial literacy is a big one. Over the course of just this stream, I've talked a lot about having your children from a young age help with budgeting, having your children do the math with money. Financial literacy. I'm going to do whole streams on each one of these topics, But financial literacy, and I'm not just going to talk about education, by the way. I can't help myself. I have to talk about politics. But not politics, but culture. Politics suck. But financial literacy. Children need to be taught financial literacy, right? We talked about how young children, well, all right, I want to word this right. All right, so we talked about how children graduate high school at 18 years old. They don't know anything. They can't balance a checkbook. They don't know anything about investing. They don't know anything from a hole in the wall, right? They have no business skills, anything like that. Well, financial literacy is very important, right? Children should have experience, understanding of how things like the stock market work, right? Before they're 18 years old, they should understand how that works. They should understand the difference between assets and liabilities, which, by the way, I would venture to guess that most people watch, well, I don't want to, I mean, most people, yes, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Most people you come across, adults, 30, 40, 50 years old, they do not know the difference between an asset and a liability. There are ways to teach that. You can do this through board games. You can do this through reading the right books. But it's something that should be focused on every year in your child's education. Read There's No Place Like Home. Read that book. You will be happy you did. I've read probably 10 of them. But it's something that the school system leaves out and something that you as parents should be taking seriously. Media literacy. I think everyone who follows me knows just how important that is. But it's something we teach through logic, through intellectual self-defense, and that type of thing. Spirituality. So the spiritual beliefs of a family should be integrated in the education of every child. So this is what I suggest to families. If you are a Christian, for example, as I am, you don't have to go crazy to get your child to be Christian. What I'm going to do is once a week, pick out any verse in the Bible and talk about the significance of that verse, what it means, what your child thinks it means, and the philosophy behind that verse. And you just do that once a week throughout their childhood, and your children will grow up with a similar faith to yours. I also strongly suggest finding community. Now, if you go to a local church, that's phenomenal. Get your children involved in the community. Make sure you're involved. Don't ever leave your child alone with another person, even if they are a so-called authority. We all know the scandals in the church. By the way, you want to talk about what the media doesn't cover. There is more pedophilia in public schools than there is in the Catholic Church. And we all know how much pedophilia there is in the Catholic Church. If you don't believe me, the number 3 at the Vatican was arrested for being part of a pedophile ring, trafficking hundreds of children. The number 3 at the Vatican, the Pope's right-hand man. Every bishop in the country of Chile a few years ago was forced to resign, and just 1 year ago, over 300 priests in Pennsylvania were indicted on charges related to pedophilia. By the way, there is more pedophilia in public school than there is in the church. I cannot stress that enough. Think about that. That is insane. Send your child to school where they will be taught what to think, not how to think. They'll be taught to submit to authority, and oh, by the way, they'll be fondled on the way there, so they will be emotionally broken by the time we send them out into the real world. Oh, and just so you know, if you weren't worried by that, in order to prepare them for the real world, we will have them do nothing in the real world. We will have them sit in small little rooms surrounded by cement walls with one window for 18 straight years, and that's how we'll get them ready for the real world. Don't you worry about it. Your 18-year-old, he's going to be just fine. You just give your children to us. Give them to us. That is the public school system. That is what it is. And don't ever think it's anything different. And we as parents can do better for our children. Now, you might not be able to, you might think you're not able to, you are able to homeschool. You might think you're not able to homeschool right now. I work with parents, all persuasion. So if you're going to homeschool, I think that's ideal. But even if you're sending your child to public school, I also work with those parents. I make plans for them. There's so much that you can do. Drop Bear, you get it. Cash Flow 101, that's a board game, and they also make Cash Flow for children, which I believe is for 9-year-olds and up. Your 9-year-old should be playing Cash Flow, and your 5-year-old should be playing Monopoly. Ooh. Went down a wrong pipe there. Ooh. Sorry about that. By the way, if you could follow me on Classical Learner Today on Instagram and my website, www.classicallearner.com. And of course, smash the Rogans up. Really got me there. It was a wrong pipe. This is my midstream cough attack. My wife is probably in the other room laughing at me. Tumble Bear, you're gonna do great in life. Just start following what you're interested in. Start improving yourself every day. Just wake up the next morning better than you were the day before. Learn skills. Make morality your goal in life. Don't get caught up in hookup culture. Find a person that is the wind behind your wings and build an empire with them. And that's how you find success in life. And build a family and have a ton of children. Avoid debt as best you can. Get a house, get a farm. Life will be good. Sports and athleticism, I covered that. Survival, I think, like the assignment I gave for Walter, camping, starting fires, fishing, securing water. This stuff is something we all should know, and oh, by the way, there's nothing better to bond with your children than doing this type of stuff, so just do it. First aid, Heimlich maneuver, so if I start choking here, jump across the computer and save me. That type of stuff. Directional intelligence, I can never tell. I still can't tell if I'm going east, north, west, south. So I think it's important to make sure people have directional intelligence, especially in the age of, oh, how do I get there, Siri? Oh, can you tell me? Cool. My buddy, good guy, just invited me over for a barbecue on Sunday, so I'll be going there with my son, and I'll be talking to all different people. So yeah, directional intelligence, and I could show you. By the way, you don't have to know all this stuff to teach it. For example, so you want to teach directional intelligence. First thing, when you're camping with your son, point out the North Star. But second, something I suggest children do from a young age, you're going somewhere 10 minutes away, get a map of your town, get a compass, and get in the habit, maybe once a month, of having your child use a map and a compass to get you to where you're going. And it's kind of like you don't use it, you lose it. Well, if they grow up using directional intelligence, then, well, they'll have directional intelligence. You don't have to know to teach. With homeschooling, we always focus on, every month we have to focus, you have to make it a priority, write it out. This is what we are going to do socially this month, and then of course anything extra is great. Like I just got invited to a barbecue. Fantastic. Taking my boy there, lots of people. So we'll do that on Sunday. Field trips, the best part of homeschooling. one of the best parts is like all the things you can do with field trips, and then additional long-term objectives. So I wrote an article about this at classicallearner.com. There are 14 lessons taught at elite private schools that were identified by John Taylor Gatto, who we discussed earlier. I'm not going to go over all 14 of those today. Maybe I'll do a stream on that later this week. But basically, form a theory of human nature based on the study of history, philosophy, theology, literature, and law. The trivium, reading, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which I discussed. An exercise in good manners. Most work at these elite private schools is independent and student-driven. Children should be involved in physical sports, which I discussed. A theory of access, which I've demonstrated. I wrote Owen a letter, and he was kind enough to send people my way, and that's in a way that is the theory of access. It's how to get seen by people or institutions you want to be seen by. Responsibility is essential. Creating the mindset of taking responsibility. Arrival at a personal code of standards. So Ben Franklin, for example, if you read his autobiography, when he was a teenager, unprompted, wrote 10 rules that his rules of morality that he thought he should live by. If you haven't read his autobiography, it's phenomenal. But elite private schools encourage this. And once a year, you should have your children write down their theory, a standard of ethics. A mastery of arts, which is creative excellence. That's what I spoke about. Power of accurate observation and recording. Dealing with challenges of all sorts. That's kind of like what I say, leveling up. Like you have to get in the habit of taking on challenges. A habit of caution in reasoning to conclusions. That's logic, philosophy, intellectual self-defense, and the development in the testing of judgment. One way you can do this, just have your child write down something they think is going to happen, and then every 6 months test if that was correct. And then, of course, we focus on mindset development, the development of mindset. We want to focus on the mindset of abundance, to always look for opportunities, an entrepreneurial attitude, always level up, take on new challenges, glass half full. We want to develop talent stacks. That's creative excellence. That's business skills. That's survival skills, everything we discussed, leadership, public speaking, feedback-based learning. We want to learn through doing, not through repeating what we read in a textbook. Leveling up, which I just discussed, motivation stacks. We want to follow our children's natural interests and use that, pair that internal interest with external motivation so that your child is motivated to learn. You don't have to push them. We want to use games as much as we can, and I'm a guideline, so I still encourage people for use me, but for math, science, and stuff like that. Also use something like Classical Conversations, Charlotte Mason. There's so many different curriculums out there. In fact, if you want curriculum recommendations, don't ask me. There's no place like home, who's in this chat. She's the one to go to. In fact, maybe we'll talk about that in greater depth when we get around to having a conversation, because I think people would find that as well as your life story to be very valuable. So, and that's what I do. So go to classicallearner.com if you're interested in my plans. Even if you're not, smash the Rogan's Up button, tag a friend, share this link with people that might be interested in it. And if you have any questions, I'll answer your questions. If not, I'll head out. For now, I'm just going to eat this strawberry. This has been a lot of fun. I'm really hopeful to do a live stream with Owen. I hope we can do that. And I also hope I can work with him and make plans for the boys, because that would be a real treat for me. And I think he would benefit as well, in my opinion. This man speaks truth, brothers and sisters. Tree Trimmer Bear, I really appreciate that. You know, that's the thing, too. Like Owen's saying, like, I may be wrong, but I'm not lying. Like, I speak what's true in life. And it's sad that people can't do that. And a lot of that's because people are so, they don't have creative excellence. They don't have talent stacks. So, like, you know, we go to work and, you know, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be fired, right? Like, all right, when I got my bachelor's degree in 7 to 12 history education, my master's degree in birth to special education, I can't tell you how many times in school they said things like, be careful what you post on social media because if you post the wrong things, you won't be hired. So what that's doing is the system is using social and financial pressure to intimidate people from speaking the truth. And there's very few people that are willing to speak the truth. And, you know, like stuff like this that I do, I told my wife, and God bless her, because I said, you know, I do stuff like this. It's a risk, and people might come for us, but we can't be afraid, and we have to do what is right in life because our boy has to see us doing what is right in life, and we, no matter what happens, we'll teach him. We will make sure he has the skills that he doesn't have to be afraid. So speak truth. And by the way, all right. So many people don't get these concepts, right? You hear on Owen streams a lot. He talks about how people are afraid to hit the like button, the Rogan button, because, you know, they don't want people to say, "Oh my God, you listen to someone who is so hateful, bigot, racist, homophobe. How can you listen to him? I cannot associate with you. I cannot associate with." Yeah, Rita, start with dumbing us down. I cannot associate with you, right? So people have these thoughts and they're afraid to speak truth, or they're afraid to share something because they might lose their job, which is, listen, that's a real world fear, you know? If you're going to lose your job and your family's depending on you, I get that. I'm not criticizing you. What I'm saying is that, for example, when I first went through my political awakening, and I'm like, oh my God, Illuminati, Freemasons, oh my God, don't drink the water, there's fluoride, oh my God. What is their reaction? That's what most people do when they first go through an awakening. And what is the reaction they get from people? Woo-hoo, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. Right? People think you're crazy because they're sleeping at the wheel. Most people go through their entire lives not having an original thought. After you go through an awakening, after it's been a while, you realize that you can't just go to your friend and say, "Oh, we didn't land on the moon." Because your friend will look at you like you had 6 heads. What you do is you wait till they bring, it doesn't matter the topic, right? Don't even worry about your topic. But like, if they were to bring up the moon to me, I would say something like, you know, I really don't get, my phone calls drop. Like if I make a phone call to you 40 minutes away, I could never get reception. But apparently in 1969, NASA was able to do a live television broadcast from the moon. You say something like that, you just plant seeds, you peck at people. So even if you're afraid, like people have roles, right? There's people like Owen that are supposed to just lay it all out there so that as people wake up, they can get to him and say, oh. But then there has to be gateways, right? Like the media is right when they say, like when they want to shut people down, they're like, oh my God, they are a gateway drug to what we have called the alt-right, which means anyone that's not a conservative, because we know conservatives are really just, they're liberalism. They just slow cut you, right? I mean, it's just like, liberalism is we're going to cut your main artery and, you're just going to be slaves. And conservatism is controlled by the liberals. And it's just like, oh, well, people that are against that, we need to have them thinking they're fighting against it and being effective. So we'll just have them slow drip. So we'll just do little cut, little cut, little cut, little cut until they look up and they have no freedom, right? So they say, oh, don't look past that. That's alt-right. Yeah, alternative to being a slave. It's just anyone who thinks differently. So yeah, the media they're telling you their fear. They're like, oh my God, these people are gateway drugs to the truth. Yeah, they're gateway drugs to the truth. You know, there would have to be gateway drugs to the alt left, except the alt left, the socialism, communism radicals, they already control everything. That they control the academic system, they control the mainstream media, they control Hollywood, they control social media. So you don't need a gateway drug. They're just the radicals are in control, right? And the radicals don't want you having a gateway to truth. Yeah, I mean the whole left-right political spectrum. It's one bird, and the bird is trying to fool you. It's like, ooh, look at my left wing. Oh, you see how different my right wing is? My right wings, they're the same exact wings. There's more out there. That's like this much of the political spectrum. A real political spectrum is, first of all, it's a circle, but it's this big. But what people get presented and see is this big. You see? So people need gateways. So if you're like worried about losing your job, you don't have to be afraid. Just post something. You don't have to post, oh my God, we didn't go to the moon. Just post, why would NASA tape over the tapes from the moon landing? Aren't those the most important tapes in human history? Does anyone else find this strange? That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. You want to wake people up. Someone who's like completely asleep, you will never wake them up by being like, this is what's up. They will hear that, and they will do what they have been conditioned to do by the public school system and by the media and by popular culture their whole life. They will go, They'll just cover their ears. So a person like that, you just poke. You just poke. You just drop little seeds like you're growing a plant. You just plant a little seed. You just plant a little seed. Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that the bank doesn't actually have to have the money that they loan to you, that they could just print it? No, that can't be true. Yeah, it's called fractional reserve banking. You should Google it. That's it. What was I saying? My wife and I are working on having our first child, and I fully intend on homeschooling and doing everything I can for my wife to be at home. Drop Bear, congratulations, brother. I had my first child 18 months ago, and God willing, we'll be having our second and third and fourth soon. So there is nothing like seeing your child be born. There's nothing like it. And like all the talk about abortion and stuff, like these people that have been indoctrinated, confused. You want to talk about like, all right. You want to hear, all right. When you talk about abortion, you always hear, a man cannot comment on a woman's body. If you are not a woman, you do not have a right to talk about abortion. Okay, you want to play that? How about no? If you haven't had a child, you don't have a right to talk about abortion because you don't know what a child is. You don't understand a pregnancy. You don't know what life is. In fact, that's my new thing. And by the way, I just thought of that live on the stream. Screw that. We are getting rid of if you're a man, you're not allowed to talk about abortion because you don't have a womb. No. The new saying is, if you have not had a child, you are not allowed to talk about abortion. Sorry, you just don't understand it. Sorry, you're talking about killing your child, and a lot of propaganda might have convinced you that that's a clump of cells, but years from now, when you actually have your first child, and you're looking at them, and they're crying, and they're putting their head on you, and they're holding on you, and they're clenching you when they're afraid, you'll think back to, I remember when my child was in the belly. I remember when my child was in my wife's belly. I remember how excited we were when there was a little kick. And I put my hand on her belly and there was a little kick. Wait a second. That wasn't a clump of cells. That was my baby. That was my baby. And then you think, then what happens to these women? This is why so many of them are depressed. They realize what it is and they think, oh my God, I killed my child. And then for anyone that has had a child, you can't comprehend the thought of your child dying, let alone you killing your child until you've had a child. So no, if you haven't had a child, you have no right to talk about abortion. Man, I gotta do these long live streams more often. I think of some good things. See, that's the beauty of philosophy, people. By the way, these aren't them, but my son is so excited every day because I've been growing strawberries. He picks strawberries that we grow from the garden. He's all about the garden, the eggplants, the strawberries, the tomatoes. We pick the lettuce straight from the garden. We make our salads. Got to teach your child where food comes from, what nutrition is, where they come from. So, you guys have any more questions, or should I call it a stream? Make sure you hit the Rogans up. www.classicallearner.com. Talented people don't worry about getting fired. Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, there's so many people that are just, they're afraid. And listen, rightfully so. They don't feel like there's anything else they can do. But we can raise our children to be talented so they don't have to be afraid. How do you answer the question regarding children that go to childcare or school are better at socializing? Yeah, I mean, in terms of a prison, see, the problem is the people that ask that question, they view school in the mental framework of a classroom, right? Like, well, in a classroom of 30 people, they're with their 30 peers. So now they're homeschooling and they'll be sitting alone in a little room with their mom, and their mom will be doing a lesson with them on a board. No, homeschooling is the opposite. It's all about getting out into the world, going on field trips, creating your own drama clubs, joining sporting teams, hosting camping events and inviting the local children in the community to come to your camping events. And as soon as the children get out from school, your child doesn't have to do all this schoolwork all the time. They're running around and they're playing with children, and you're bringing them to event after event, and everything that there is that there's a lot of children at, you just bring them to it. There is this notion that proper socialization happens at school, but school is not a natural environment. Children are only in an environment with, by the way, you want to talk about the psychology of people being afraid of authority? Children in school settings, right? They're only in classrooms with children that are their age. So they have a difficult time dealing with people that are older than them, right? But when you homeschool, it's all about getting them out into the world. And then, of course, beyond that, which it's the complete opposite of people's perception, there's also homeschool groups. So if you're worried about that, join a homeschool group and your children will have, 30, there's groups of 30, 50 kids that they'd be, children, I don't like the term kids, children that they would be in homeschool with. In fact, there is a great way to describe this. w.instagram.com. Instagram.com. That's Bono. That fraud. He's giving you the finger. I like that one. That's educate your children with your values. By the way, guys, if the values that I'm describing that I'm raising my child with are not yours, my plans don't force you to raise your child with my values. The whole point is that I'll have a conversation with you about what your values are, and then I'll talk to you about the proper way to implement those values so that your child learns your values. Um, why would I teach? Why would I tell you to educate your child with my values? I wouldn't do that. That's me without a shirt on, ladies. So you know. All right. All right. This one. Love this one. Gotta make me smaller. Actually, no, I don't. All right, hold on. All right, I love this one. It's my Instagram, Classical Learner Today. Follow it. Socialization and mainstream society. By the way, this is why a picture is picture's the most powerful form of persuasion, right? That's why, like, the moon landing as a topic, you try to tell someone we didn't go to the moon, they say, no, I saw it. I saw it. We went. Because seeing is believing. All right, so yeah. All right, so socialization and mainstream society. Homeschooling. The myth. You're in a fishbowl. The reality. You're out in the ocean swimming in the real world. Like, while public school students are sitting in a classroom that they don't want to be in until the bell rings and they have to go to another classroom they don't want to be in, and their teacher's talking to them about something they don't want to learn about, a homeschool child is hanging out with their homeschool group out in the woods, starting fires and telling stories and having the time of their lives. So it's just the complete opposite of what you would think. Public schooling. The desire. The result. Yeah, so the desire of public schooling is to make everyone the exact same, and everyone is the same. They are mindless drones incapable of operating in a free market. If that answered your question. The idea of socialization was actually spread to encourage people to accept age segregation in schools. Yeah, age segregation is one of the worst things you can do when educating your child. Your child should be around children of all ages. So, there should be a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. And that's how it used to be in the one-room schoolhouses when America was America and people lived the real American dream, right? People, they would go to these one-room schoolhouses and then everyone owned their own business by the time they were 20. Everyone did. And that has been taken away from us. So it's the complete opposite of what you would think. So, all right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Please smash the Rogan Up button. And Classical Learner Today, www.classicallearner.com. When you go to the website, it will prompt you to join my email list. Email it because then you'll get notifications as to when I post to my blog. And I do like to think my blog is very helpful if you're looking to better educate your child. So, guys, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a big day for education. This has been a big day for my business. And Owen, if you watch this, can't thank you enough for reading out my letter and sending the bears my way. So this has been Classical Learner. I am the parent guide, and together we are going to revolutionize the way we educate our children. Take care, guys.